November 15th, 2007, North Fraser Pretrial Center, British Columbia. One man, 4 doors, 0 resistance. And the craziest part? He walked out the front door, dressed as a janitor, with a guard holding every door open for him. Omid Tafeli was the kingpin of the Persian Mafia in Canada, convicted of kidnapping and brutal torture, facing 11 years in prison, plus extradition to the United States. On that November evening, he pushed a cleaning cart through 4 security checkpoints and vanished into the night. But this isn't just a story about a prison escape. It's about the guard who was so broken by debt and depression that he sold his freedom for $50,000. The surveillance footage that captured every humiliating second, and the twist that made it even more pathetic. The guard never got paid. He waited at a gas station for hours. No one showed up. He risked everything for money that never came. This is how a mob boss escaped Canada's most advanced prison with nothing but a mop and a promise. Omid Tafeli was born on October 31st, 1970, in Kermanshah, Iran. He arrived in Canada in 1994, settling in Vancouver. It didn't take him long to recognize that crime paid, and he was very good at it. By the early 2000s, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police recognized Tafeli as heading one of the most significant criminal organizations in Western Canada. Dozens of people worked under him, moving cocaine, ecstasy, and other drugs across the country. He lived the life: luxury cars, high-end condos, designer suits. He styled himself after Nino Brown, the untouchable drug lord from the movie New Jack City. His crew called him Nino, and he demanded respect. In November 2000, he was arrested with his brother-in-law for possession of 3 kilograms of cocaine in a joint operation between Vancouver police and the RCMP. Tafeli was found not guilty. But drugs weren't his only business. From 1999 to 2002, Tafeli ran a massive international telemarketing scam. The operation specifically targeted elderly Americans. His crew would call vulnerable victims, telling them they had won a lottery but needed to pay taxes or fees up front to collect their winnings. It was a cruel scam. It netted over $3 million from hundreds of victims. The operation was so large that the FBI issued federal warrants for mail fraud, wire fraud, and telemarketing fraud. On January 30th, 2003, a federal arrest warrant was issued by the U.S. District Court in California, but Tafeli remained in Canada, still operating, still untouchable. What kind of man builds an empire on drug trafficking and preying on the elderly, the kind who would do anything to protect it? In 2005, $300,000 of Tafeli's drug money vanished. He suspected one of his couriers had stolen the cash and fled to Vietnam. Tafeli didn't write it off as a loss. He needed to send a message. He kidnapped the courier's brother-in-law. What followed was hours of brutal interrogation. Tafeli didn't just beat the man. He systematically tortured and sexually assaulted him. Determined to find out where the money had gone, the victim was eventually let go, broken, terrified. But he made a choice. He went to the police. This act of extreme violence was Tafeli's downfall. He was arrested soon after. The untouchable kingpin was finally caged. In July 2005, Tafeli was sent to the North Fraser Pretrial Center to await trial. This wasn't some crumbling old jail. Opened in 2001, the facility was a state-of-the-art maximum security prison. How do you escape from a prison that was designed to be escape-proof? North Fraser Pretrial Center sat in Port Coquitlam, British Columbia, a multi-million-dollar facility, one of the most technologically advanced jails in Canada. The design was modern. Guards monitored everything from elevated secure control centers. The doors were reinforced steel. Movement of inmates was highly restricted. Every corridor was covered by closed-circuit television cameras. In its 6 years of operation, no one had ever escaped. The facility held some of British Columbia's most dangerous criminals, gang members, murderers, drug traffickers awaiting trial, Security protocols were designed for exactly these kinds of inmates. But every system has one fatal vulnerability. The people running it, Tavali hated prison. He was a man used to control, used to luxury, used to power. Now he was just another inmate in a jumpsuit. His trial was a disaster. The evidence of the kidnapping and assault was overwhelming. In October 2007, he was convicted on all counts: kidnapping, sexual assault, unlawful confinement, uttering threats, causing bodily harm. He hadn't been sentenced yet, but the outlook was bleak. The prosecution was asking for more than a decade. And that wasn't even the worst part. While in custody, the British Columbia Supreme Court had ordered his extradition to the United States in May 2007. He was awaiting his appeal. That meant if he lost, the moment he finished his Canadian sentence, he would be shipped straight to a federal prison. Omid Tafli, at 37 years old, was looking at the prospect of dying behind bars. For a man who saw himself as a king, this was unacceptable. He had millions of dollars stashed away. He had international connections from Europe to the Middle East, and he refused to let the system win. He was so confident that he openly boasted to other inmates and staff. He told them he wouldn't be there for his sentencing. They laughed it off. Where was he going to go? But Tavali was already analyzing the prison. He knew the walls were too thick, the fences too high, the technology too advanced for a traditional escape. So he looked for something else, a weakness in the human element. He watched the guards. He studied their routines, their conversations, their body language. And he found the perfect target. What if he could find someone desperate enough to risk everything? Someone broken enough to betray their oath for money? Edwin Tickney was a corrections officer at North Fraser. On the surface, he was just a regular guard, 35 years old, a family man with about a decade of experience. But beneath the uniform, Tickney was drowning. According to psychiatric reports presented at his later sentencing, Tickney was suffering from a major depressive episode. The stress of working in a maximum security environment combined with family issues was crushing him. But his biggest secret was his addiction. Tickney was a pathological gambler. He was deep in debt, the kind of debt that makes you desperate. He was also struggling with alcohol abuse. In short, Edwin Tickney was weak, broken, and desperate for money. Omid Tavali, a sophisticated manipulator who had spent his life exploiting weakness, recognized this instantly. The corruption didn't happen overnight. It likely began small. A conversation here, a shared joke there. Tavali was charismatic. He knew how to make people feel important. He started grooming Tickney. He listened to his problems, sympathized with his financial stress. Tavali wasn't just an inmate to Tickney anymore. He became a confidant. This is how organized crime corrupts officials. They don't walk up on the first day and offer a bribe. They build a relationship. They find the pressure point. And then they squeeze. Once Tavali felt the time was right, he made the offer. $50,000 cash. For Tavali, $50,000 was pocket change. For Tickney, it was a lifeline, a way out of debt, a way to stop the suffocating pressure of his gambling losses. Tickney agreed. He was willing to risk his career, his reputation, his own freedom, to help one of the most dangerous men in the facility escape. Would Tickney actually go through with it, or would he back out at the last moment? The plan had to be simple. It had to rely entirely on Tickney's access and avoid any scrutiny from other guards or the advanced security systems. The solution was brilliant in its audacity. Tavali would impersonate a janitor. Cleaners moved through the facility constantly. They were practically invisible. If Tavali could get a uniform, and if Tickney was the one escorting him, they could potentially walk straight through the security checkpoints. The plan relied on one assumption: other guards wouldn't look too closely at a janitor being escorted by a trusted officer. They were banking on human complacency, the fatal flaw in any secure system. But the risks were enormous. North Fraser had 4 secure checkpoints between the living units and the outside world. Each one required authorization. If a single guard recognized Tavili, or if Tikne hesitated even for a second, the plan would collapse. As November 2007 progressed, the pressure mounted. Tavili's sentencing hearing was just weeks away. He knew he was running out of time. They set the date, Thursday, November 15th. The escape began during the evening. Staff movement can be higher at that time, which may have made their transit less conspicuous. Somehow, Tavili acquired an authentic janitor's uniform. The shirt, the pants, everything needed to look the part. He also got a cleaning cart, complete with a mop and bucket. He put bricks under a blanket on his bed to simulate his sleeping body. Then he changed into the uniform. He was no longer the feared crime boss, just a humble cleaner. He met up with Edwin Tikne. This was the moment of truth. Tikne had to lead Tavili through 4 highly secure security gates. If he backed out now, he knew Tavili's organization might come for him. He was committed. He started walking. Tavili pushed the cart. He deliberately kept his head down, trying to obscure his face from cameras positioned on the ceiling. Tikne was the escort, the man with the authority. The entire sequence was captured by the prison's closed-circuit television cameras, a chilling silent movie of betrayal. They approached the first secure door. Tikne had to appear completely normal, like he was just escorting a janitor to a different section of the prison. He initiated the unlock sequence. Click. They walked through. One down. They continued through the sterile corridors. Tavili was deep inside the secure perimeter of a maximum security facility, just walking freely now. They approached the second gate. Again, Tikne used his access. He maintained his composure. He was betraying his colleagues, undermining the entire justice system. But he didn't falter. He was thinking about the money. Click. The second door opened. They were getting closer to the administrative area, the least secure part of the facility. The third gate was the critical juncture. It separated the high-security inmate areas from the access zones leading to the exit. Other staff were likely present. They walked past offices, past monitoring stations. Did anyone notice the janitor? Did anyone recognize the face of the infamous Omid Tavili, whose trial had been all over the news? No. They just saw a guard they knew, Edwin Tikne, and a cleaner pushing a cart. It was routine, it was normal, complacency had won. Tikne unlocked the third gate. Click. They passed through. Finally, they reached the last barrier, the front door of the North Fraser pretrial center. This was it, the threshold between captivity and freedom. Tikne, focused on the $50,000, the end of his debts, made the final move. He opened the front door. Omid Tavili, dressed as a janitor, pushed his cleaning cart out into the cool November evening air. He didn't run. He didn't look back. He simply walked away from the prison. A getaway ride may have been arranged nearby. He disappeared into the night. The escape was flawless. The Kingpin was free. Edwin Tikne had to walk back into the facility. Knowing he had just committed a massive betrayal, he had to finish his shift, pretend nothing had happened. But then came the twist that made everything worse. After his shift ended, Tikne drove to a nearby gas station. According to the plan, he was supposed to meet someone there for the $50,000 cash. He waited. No one showed up. The realization must have been crushing. Tavili had completely betrayed the man who risked everything for him. He used Tikne's desperation to gain his freedom and then discarded him without a second thought. The $50,000 promise was just another lie from a master manipulator. Edwin Tikne had thrown away his career, his freedom, and his reputation for nothing. Would anyone notice that Tavili was gone? For how long could this charade continue? For hours, internal tracking still suggested Tavili was in his cell. The bricks under the blanket fooled no one who actually checked, but no one checked. Later that evening, during a head count around 9:30 p.m., staff realized he was gone. The realization set off panic. The entire facility was put on immediate lockdown. Alarms blared, doors slammed shut. An emergency response team swarmed the facility. But it was far too late. Tavli had a massive head start. The administration and the guards were in shock. How could this happen? North Fraser was supposed to be escape-proof. This was the first escape in the prison's history, and it involved one of their most high-profile, dangerous inmates. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police were called in immediately. The investigation began by reviewing the CCTV footage. That's when the full, humiliating truth was revealed. The footage clearly showed Tavila in the janitor's uniform. It showed him walking calmly through the facility. And most damningly, it showed Corrections Officer Edwin Tickney leading him every step of the way, unlocking the 4 security gates, letting him out the front door. It wasn't a security failure, it was betrayal. The embarrassment for BC Corrections was catastrophic. It was the first time in the history of the organization that a guard had been charged with helping an inmate escape. Public trust was shattered. A massive manhunt was launched for Omid Tavili. Police warned the public that he was dangerous. They knew Tavili had the resources and connections to disappear instantly. Access to forged passports, cash reserves, international safe houses. They were right. While police were setting up roadblocks around the prison, Tavili was likely already crossing borders, perhaps heading south to the United States, or preparing to board an international flight. The focus of the investigation quickly turned to Edwin Tickney. He was arrested on Friday, the day after the escape. Faced with the undeniable evidence of the CCTV footage, Tickney had no choice. He confessed everything. In April 2008, Edwin Tickney pleaded guilty to obstruction of justice and accepting a bribe. During his sentencing hearing, the full story of his vulnerability came out. His lawyer argued that Tavili was a sophisticated manipulator who had exploited Tickney's weaknesses, his depression, his pathological gambling addiction, his financial desperation. Tickney apologized in court, expressing remorse for his actions, but the damage was done. His colleagues at North Fraser felt angry and betrayed. The integrity of the system he was supposed to uphold had been compromised by one of their own. The Crown asked for 5 to 10 years. The defense asked for 2 to 3. On August 8, 2008, Edwin Tickney was sentenced to 3 years and 3 months in prison. The judge acknowledged that time in prison would be especially hard for a former corrections officer. Tickney would certainly need to be kept in protective custody, isolated from the general population for his own safety. The judge also noted something else. He believed Tickney never received the money Tavili had promised. $50,000. The promise that made him throw everything away, it was never paid. While Edwin Tickney was heading to prison, Omid Tavili was living the high life somewhere in the world. A few weeks after the escape, Tavili was sentenced in absentia, 11 years for the kidnapping and assault. It was a meaningless gesture. Tavili had achieved what few others could. He had beaten the system and vanished without a trace. His notoriety only grew. In April 2008, Forbes.com compiled a list of the world's 10 most wanted fugitives after consulting with law enforcement agencies globally. The list included the most infamous names on the planet: Osama bin Laden, the head of Al-Qaeda, Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, the leader of the Sinaloa cartel, and right there among them was Omid Tavili. The international manhunt spanned continents. The FBI still wanted him for the $3 million fraud against the elderly. The RCMP wanted him for his escape and his organized crime activities. Interpol issued a red notice requesting his arrest worldwide. There were rumors and sightings everywhere. Some said he fled to Europe, Germany, or the Netherlands. where he had strong criminal connections. But the most prevalent theory was that he returned to his native Iran. Iran does not have an extradition treaty with Canada or the United States. That would make him virtually untouchable. In a bizarre incident shortly before Tikney's sentencing, Tavali reportedly contacted the police himself. He called the RCMP claiming he was in Toronto and wanted to negotiate his return to British Columbia. Law enforcement took it seriously, mobilizing resources to track the call. But it led nowhere. It seemed Tavali was just taunting them, playing games, proving he could still move freely even within Canada. The escape forced North Fraser Pretrial Center to conduct a full-scale security review. Procedures were tightened, background checks on staff were intensified. The complacency that allowed Tavali to walk out the front door was shattered. But the stain on their reputation remained. The escape-proof prison had been defeated by a mop and a bribe. Edwin Tikney served his sentence and was eventually released. A broken man who had lost his career, his reputation, and his freedom for a bribe he never received. He faded into obscurity, a casualty of Omid Tavali's manipulation. To this day, Omid Tavali remains an international fugitive. It's been over 17 years since he walked out of that prison dressed as a janitor. He would be in his mid-50s now. Despite the international warrants and the most wanted status, he has never been caught. His case remains open with both Canadian and American authorities. The FBI still lists him as wanted for fraud. The RCMP still wants him for his crimes in British Columbia. But no one has seen him since November 2007. Some believe he's living comfortably in Iran. Others think he moved through his international network to Europe or the Middle East. A few even speculate he might be dead. The truth is, no one knows. Omid Tavali, the 9-0 Brown of Vancouver, the man who escaped Canada's most advanced prison with a janitor's uniform and a $50,000 promise. He remains a ghost, a legend of the underworld, a reminder that no system is truly escape-proof. Remember that surveillance footage? The one showing a mob boss calmly pushing a cleaning cart through 4 security doors while a guard held each one open? That footage became the most humiliating evidence in Canadian corrections history. It showed exactly how human weakness can defeat millions of dollars in technology. The prison had reinforced steel doors, elevated control centers, cameras covering every corridor. None of it mattered. Because Edwin Tikney had the keys, and Omid Tavali knew exactly how to get them. And that brings us to the end of our story. If you liked it, don't forget to like and subscribe and activate the bell button so you can receive new videos.